She stood under the cold rain, watching the clock on her phone tick closer to the interview that could save her home. One missed chance, and everything she loved would be gone. Then she saw him, an older man beside a broken car, soaked, frustrated, and completely alone. She hesitated. Logic told her to walk away. Survival demanded it. But her heart didn't listen. She stopped anyway. What she couldn't have known was this small, selfless choice would reveal the true meaning of power and character, and quietly place her future in the hands of the one person who could change it forever. Leila Parker had learned how to disappear. To most people, she was just another night shift janitor, someone you walked past without noticing, someone whose name you never learned. She worked when the city slept, scrubbing floors in silent office buildings, earning just enough to stay one missed paycheck away from disaster. Fear had become her constant companion. Fear of rent notices, fear of illness, fear that one bad week would erase everything she'd fought to hold together. That morning, fear felt heavier than ever. The interview wasn't just another opportunity, it was survival. A daytime administrative role, stable hours, health benefits, a chance to finally breathe. Miss it, and the eviction notice taped inside her apartment door would no longer be a warning. It would be a sentence. Standing at the bus stop, rain soaking through her thin coat, Leila clutched her resume like it could keep her standing. Ink smudged slightly where her fingers trembled. She whispered the answers she'd practiced all night, repeating them like prayers. Asterisk, don't ramble. Sit straight. Smile. Don't mess this up. Asterisk. The bus was late. Again, each passing minute tightened the knot in her chest. She checked her phone. No service. Of course. The city moved on without her, cars rushing past, headlights slicing through the rain as if her panic didn't exist. When the bus finally came, it lurched forward with a groan, only to stop again less than 2 blocks later. Traffic. Construction. Sirens somewhere far off. Leila's heart sank. She stared out the fogged-up window and did the math in her head. Even if everything went perfectly from here on out, she'd be cutting it dangerously close. One delay, one mistake, one wrong decision. That's when she saw him. On the side of the road, an older man stood beside a car with its hood open, rain pouring down his shoulders. He looked around, searching for help that never came. Most drivers sped past without slowing. Leila felt her stomach drop. She didn't know it yet, but this was the moment her life would split in two, and everything was about to go wrong. Leila Parker had learned how to disappear. To most people, she was just another night shift janitor, someone you walked past without noticing, someone whose name you never learned. She worked when the city slept, scrubbing floors in silent office buildings, earning just enough to stay one missed paycheck away from disaster. Fear had become her constant companion. Fear of rent notices, fear of illness, fear that one bad week would erase everything she'd fought to hold together. That morning, fear felt heavier than ever. The interview wasn't just another opportunity, it was survival. A daytime administrative role, stable hours, health benefits, a chance to finally breathe. Miss it, and the eviction notice taped inside her apartment door would no longer be a warning. It would be a sentence. Standing at the bus stop, rain soaking through her thin coat, Leila clutched her resume like it could keep her standing. Ink smudged slightly where her fingers trembled. She whispered the answers she'd practiced all night, repeating them like prayers. Asterisk, don't ramble. Sit straight. Smile. Don't mess this up. Asterisk. The bus was late. Again, each passing minute tightened the knot in her chest. She checked her phone. No service. Of course. The city moved on without her, cars rushing past, headlights slicing through the rain as if her panic didn't exist. When the bus finally came, it lurched forward with a groan, only to stop again less than 2 blocks later. Traffic. Construction. Sirens somewhere far off. Leila's heart sank. She stared out the fogged-up window and did the math in her head. Even if everything went perfectly from here on out, she'd be cutting it dangerously close. One delay, one mistake, one wrong decision. That's when she saw him. On the side of the road, an older man stood beside a car with its hood open, rain pouring down his shoulders. He looked around, searching for help that never came. Most drivers sped past without slowing. Leila felt her stomach drop. She didn't know it yet, but this was the moment her life would split in two, and everything was about to go wrong. The luxury SUV didn't belong on that street. It was sleek, polished, and impossibly out of place among the dented sedans and rusted delivery vans lining the curb. Steam curled out from beneath its hood like a quiet warning, and the hazard lights blinked steadily through the rain. Leila noticed it only because it had stopped directly ahead of the bus stop, close enough that she could see the driver standing beside it, rain soaking into his expensive coat. He looked lost, not confused, lost in a way that suggested this kind of problem had never happened to him before. Leila shifted her weight, checking the time again. Her chest tightened. The bus would arrive any second. She couldn't afford another delay. Not today. Not when everything depended on this one interview. The man glanced around, eyes scanning the street. Cars rushed past him without slowing, tires slicing through puddles, splashing water onto the curb. He raised a hand once, then lowered again, embarrassed. When his gaze landed on Leila, he hesitated. "Excuse me," he called out, voice strained but polite. "I don't suppose you have a phone signal?" Leila froze. She looked at him, then at the road, then at the empty stretch where the bus would appear any moment. Her first instinct was to shake her head and look away. That was the smart thing, the necessary thing. She'd learned long ago that survival didn't leave much room for detours. "I'm sorry," she began, already feeling the guilt bloom in her chest. But then she really looked at him. Rain streamed down his face. His hands shook slightly, not from the cold, but from frustration. This wasn't someone asking for money or favors. This was someone stranded, stripped of whatever power his polished appearance usually gave him. "I just need to call roadside assistance," he said quietly. "My phone died. I'll be out of your way in minutes." Minutes. Leila's heart pounded. She could hear her own thoughts arguing with each other. "You can't help him. You don't have time. This interview decides whether you keep your home." And then, softer, but impossible to ignore, "What if that were you?" She exhaled sharply, the decision burning in her chest before her mind could stop it. "I can try," she said. The relief on his face was immediate and almost painful to witness. She stepped closer, rain soaking her shoes completely now. Her phone showed one flickering bar of service, barely enough. She dialed, waited, redialed. The line dropped twice. Each second felt like sand slipping through her fingers. Behind her, she heard it. The bus. The low hiss of brakes. The familiar rumble of its engine pulling toward the stop. Leila's breath caught. She turned her head just enough to see the bus slow, doors opening, warm yellow light spilling out onto the rain-soaked pavement. This was it. Her last chance. The driver glanced toward her, waiting. Her phone buzzed, finally connecting. "Roadside assistance. How may I help you?" Leila swallowed hard. "Yes. Hi. There's a vehicle broken down on." The bus doors closed. The sound hit her like a punch to the chest. The engine roared, and the bus pulled away, tires spraying water as it disappeared down the street. Leila stood frozen, rain blurring her vision as she watched her interview, her future, drive away. Something inside her cracked. She finished the call anyway, voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. She gave the details, the location, the vehicle description. When she ended the call, her hand was shaking. "I'm so sorry," the man said, his voice heavy with regret. "I didn't realize." "It's fine," she lied quickly. "They'll be here soon." She handed him her umbrella without thinking. "You shouldn't stand in the rain." He hesitated. "I couldn't take that." "You should," she said, forcing a small smile. "I'll manage." He took it slowly, as if understanding the weight of what she was giving up. They stood there in silence, rain soaking Leila's hair, her clothes clinging uncomfortably to her skin. The adrenaline faded, leaving only the hollow ache in her chest. She imagined the interview room. Empty chair, crossed-off name, opportunity slipping quietly into someone else's hands. This was it. No backup plan. No safety net. Roadside assistance arrived 20 minutes later. The man thanked her again, over and over, his eyes filled with something like disbelief. She nodded politely, already turning away, her shoulders slumped under the weight of what she'd lost. As she walked home through the rain, Each step felt heavier than the last. She imagined the eviction notice again. The boxes. The night spent wondering where she'd gone wrong. All because she stopped. All because she chose kindness over herself. What Leila didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that the man she'd helped wasn't just any stranger, and that the choice she thought had cost her everything was about to give her more than she'd ever dared to hope for. By the time Leila reached the sidewalk outside the office building, the rain had softened to a steady drizzle, but it didn't matter. She was already soaked through, hair plastered her cheeks, resumed bent and wrinkled beyond repair. The glass doors reflected her back at herself. Tired eyes, trembling hands, a woman who looked like she already knew the answer. She checked the time. Late. Not by a few minutes. Not enough to explain away. Late enough to be invisible. Still, she stepped inside. The lobby smelled of polished stone and coffee. Warm, quiet, untouched by storms or desperation. People moved with purpose, heels clicking confidently across the floor. Leila stood near the reception desk, water dripping from her coat, feeling like she didn't belong in the same world. She took out her phone and dialed the number she'd memorized the night before. After 2 rings, a calm, professional voice answered. Human Resources. Hi, Leila said, forcing her voice steady. This is Leila Parker. I had an interview scheduled for this morning. I'm calling because I was delayed due to an emergency, and I just wanted to see if... I'm sorry, the voice interrupted, already distant. What time was your interview scheduled? 8:30. There was a pause. Keys clicking. Paper shifting. And it's now 9:12, the woman said. Not unkindly. Not warmly either. Just factual. I'm afraid we've already concluded interviews for today. Leila swallowed. Understand. I was only hoping there might be a chance to reschedule. I had to help someone who... Ms. Parker, the woman said gently, but firmly, we value punctuality here. It's a core expectation. Unfortunately, we can't make exceptions. That was it. No questions. No curiosity. No interest in the reason behind the delay. The words helped someone fell into the silence and disappeared without leaving a mark. I see, Leila replied. She didn't argue. Didn't beg. She'd learned long ago that explanations were a luxury people like her rarely received. The call ended. Leila stood there for a moment, phone still pressed to her ear, listening to nothing. Around her, the building hummed with productivity, printers, footsteps, quiet laughter. Life continued uninterrupted. For the first time that morning, she allowed herself to fully understand what had happened. She'd lost, not because she wasn't capable, not because she wasn't prepared, but because she'd chosen humanity over a schedule, and the world hadn't cared. She folded her resume carefully, even though it no longer mattered, and tucked it into her bag. Then she turned and walked back out into the rain. The city felt different now. Louder, colder, less forgiving. She passed coffee shops filled with people who had places to be, conversations that didn't revolve around survival. She passed a real estate office with listings glowing brightly in the window, numbers that might as well have been written in another language. By the time she reached her apartment building, her legs ached and her shoulders sagged under exhaustion. Inside, the apartment was silent. She dropped her bag by the door and leaned against the wall, sliding down until she was sitting on the floor. For a moment, she just sat there, breathing slowly, counting each inhale like it was something she needed to earn. No tears came. She felt too tired for anger, too drained for panic. What settled over her instead was something quieter, heavier, acceptance. She stood and walked to the kitchen counter, where a folded paper waited exactly where she'd left it. The eviction notice. 2 days. 48 hours to find money she didn't have. 48 hours to change a reality that had taken years to close in on her. She did the math again, even though she already knew the answer. Extra shifts wouldn't cover it. Loans were impossible. Family was a door she'd closed long ago. She pressed her fingers against the counter, steadying herself. This is it, she thought. This is where it ends. But even in that stillness, something unexpected happened. She didn't regret stopping for the stranger. The thought surprised her. Despite everything, despite the rejection, the silence, the ticking clock, she knew she would make the same choice again. Helping him had cost her something real, something painful. But it hadn't taken away who she was. And that mattered more than she'd realized. As night fell, Leila sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. Somewhere out there, people were making decisions that would never touch her life. Somewhere else, a man with a luxury SUV was probably back to his routine, never thinking of her again. She didn't know that the phone call she'd made that morning had set something else in motion. She didn't know that her name had been heard by someone who rarely listened. All Leila knew was this. She had 48 hours. No plan, no safety net, and nothing left to lose. The silence that followed felt endless. But it wasn't the end. It was only the pause before everything changed. Leila didn't expect the call. When her phone buzzed the next afternoon, she almost ignored it. Unknown number. Probably a reminder she couldn't afford, or a bill she already knew she couldn't pay. She let it ring once, twice, then answered. "This is Leila Parker." "Ms. Parker," the voice said, calm and professional. "This is Human Resources from Crestwood Industries. We'd like you to come in today for a brief follow-up interview." Leila blinked. "I'm sorry, a follow-up?" "Yes. Today, if possible." Her heart pounded. I thought I was rejected." There was a pause. "Circumstances have changed," the voice replied. "Can you be here at 3?" She hung up slowly, phone still in her hand, afraid the moment would vanish if she moved too fast. By 3 o'clock, she was sitting in the same polished lobby as the day before. Dry this time, but no less nervous. Her borrowed blazer felt stiff on her shoulders. Her hands rested neatly in her lap, fingers intertwined to keep from shaking. The interview room was smaller than she remembered. Too quiet, too bright. 2 HR managers sat across from her, their expressions unreadable. They didn't smile. "Ms. Parker," one of them began, folding her hands, "we've reviewed yesterday's incident." Leila nodded. "I understand if we need to address your professionalism," the other interrupted. The word hit harder than she expected. "You arrived late," the first continued. "You didn't notify us in advance. That shows poor time management." Leila opened her mouth to respond, then stopped herself. Another note was added to the file. "Additionally," the second said, eyes never leaving the paper, "your employment history suggests instability. Night shifts, short-term contracts. It raises concerns about focus and reliability." Leila felt herself shrinking. "We're also worried," the first added, "that you're too soft." Leila looked up. "Too soft. You prioritize emotions," she said plainly. "Helping strangers. Personal distractions. This is a fast-paced environment. We need people who can separate feelings from responsibility." Each sentence felt like another door closing. Leila listened quietly, nodding, absorbing every word without protest. She recognized this tone. She'd heard versions of it her entire life. Asterisk, not enough, not strong enough, not right enough, asterisk. When the silence settled, she realized they were waiting. "For your response," one of them said. Leila took a breath. "I understand your concerns," she said softly. "And I agree, I was late. But I don't believe kindness is a weakness. I believe it's a reflection of character." The room went still. The second manager sighed. "Ms. Parker, this position requires discipline above all else. Given yesterday's events, we don't believe you're the right fit." There it was. Final. Clean. Unavoidable. Leila nodded once. "I appreciate your time," she said, standing. "Thank you for the opportunity." She gathered her bag, every movement careful, composed. No tears. No arguments. She had learned how to leave rooms like this with dignity. Her hand reached for the door handle. That's when the door opened. The sound was subtle, but it changed everything. A man stepped inside, his presence commanding the room before he spoke a single word. Tailored suit, calm posture, eyes sharp, observant. Leila froze. She knew that face. The rain, the broken car, the trembling hands, the umbrella she'd given away. The stranger from the roadside looked at her, and recognition flickered instantly in his eyes. "Ms. Parker," he said gently. The HR manager stood up so fast their chairs scraped the floor. "Mr. Whitmore," one of them stammered. "We didn't realize." "That's quite all right," he said, raising a hand. His voice was calm, but carried weight. "Please sit." Layla's heart thundered in her chest. Whitmore. She knew that name. Richard Whitmore, founder, majority shareholder, CEO. Her knees felt weak. He turned to her. I was hoping I'd find you here. The room held its breath. Yesterday morning, he continued, my car broke down in the rain. I was late for an emergency board call. No phone, no assistance. Dozens of people passed me by. He paused until one woman stopped. Layla's throat tightened. She didn't know who I was. She didn't ask for anything. She gave up something important to help a stranger she thought would never matter to her life again. He looked directly at the HR managers. That woman, he said, was Ms. Parker. Silence fell like a verdict. She arrived late. One manager began carefully, which indicates character, Whitmore interrupted. Not a lack of it. He turned back to Leila. You missed an interview that could change your life, he said, and you still chose to help someone who had nothing to offer you in return. Leila swallowed. I didn't know. That's the point, he said softly. He faced the room again. You describe her as unreliable, he said. I describe her as dependable in ways a clock can't measure. You called her unfocused, he continued. I watched her stay calm, persistent, and resourceful under pressure. And too soft. He allowed himself a faint smile. If compassion disqualifies someone here, then we've lost sight of what leadership actually means. No one spoke. Whitmore turned back to Leila. Ms. Parker, he said, this company doesn't need more people who arrive on time, but look away when it matters. He extended his hand. It needs people like you. Leila stared at his hand, stunned, tears finally blurring her vision. I don't understand, she whispered. You will, he said kindly. Starting today. The room remained frozen as Leila took his hand, still unsure if she was standing in reality or something she'd imagined during a long, desperate night. What she didn't realize yet was that this moment didn't just save her. It redefined the very meaning of success inside that company, and nothing would ever be the same again. Leila didn't win because she was lucky. She won because she chose kindness when it cost her everything. The world tells us kindness is weakness, that helping others will hold us back. But sometimes the very thing you think ruined your future is what quietly builds it. If this story touched you, remember, what's meant for you could be delayed, but it will never miss you. Backhand index pointing right, like, subscribe, and share for more stories that restore faith in humanity.